And we welcome in Zac Jackson from The Athletic at Akron Jackson on Twitter. Hello, Zac.
Who canceled?
Nobody.
Besides Harbaugh, who canceled?
We wanted
Besides
you,
Harbaugh.
and we got you.
Okay. Good morning.
Morning to you. Are we going to get John Harbaugh?
No, I don't think so.
Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah. You guys got a lot of hours to fill, and I don't envy that.
What are you trying to say?
that they were never going to get Harbaugh.
No, damn it. Hold on now. We can't even get a meeting with him?
I think we'll find out, but I don't. There's no indication. I mean, the Giants, maybe the Falcons, right? Look, there are selling points to the Browns' job. I don't think a guy that was in the AFC North for 18 years wants to go back to Baltimore with this offensive roster. You know, maybe it's not that simple, but I think here in the real world, it probably is close to that still.
All right, fine. Tone, go ahead. Ask the man some questions.
Well, obviously they're casting the widest net possible, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. You do run the risk of, like, kind of paralysis by overanalysis. Like, you want to have a targeted search at some point, but it's so early in the process. When do you think this thing seriously starts to get narrowed down?
I think in the next 3 to 7 days, Anthony. You know, I thought it would be 8 to 10 interviews, but I see 16 on the Titans list and 15 or 16 on the Ravens list, and I see the potential for the Browns going over 10, and I get it, right? Like, the structure of the rules where you can't have people who are still employed by teams playing until next week makes it so you might as well.
In person.
Right? And then, in person. And then the reality of the Browns situation, where you would probably prefer an offensive coach, and there are not a lot of experienced coaches, like, you might as well use the time. You know, you might as well go through the process and see. And I know everybody has a theory about this is just a coordinator interview, or this is just for the future, or they're not really going to hire this guy. And I think in most cases those theories probably are right. But I think it's totally the right thing to do. Be slow, to be thorough, to be open-minded in who you look at and what you hear from these people, and then shape it. You know, this is an interesting setup. This is a ready-made defense that's good enough to be playing at a higher level than the team is. This is a major, probably multi-year rebuilding project on offense. It's now the second job open in its own division, and the other job is the best job available. So, I've always thought that it wouldn't be, narrowed down for a while. Obviously, if it is an assistant of somebody that goes to the Super Bowl, it's going to go a long time. But I think it'll be the 2 or 3 finalists. I think will be a week or so from now.
Zac Jackson with us from The Athletic. I thought about this a lot because obviously people are jumping on the fact that they've never heard of a bunch of these young guys, just like they wouldn't have heard of Sean McVay, in the process. Mm-hmm. So this is a little different from last year where you had obvious coordinators or, somebody lurking that or the year before with Peyton or Harbaugh. In this case, though, Andrew Berry's never done this before. Is there really one right way to go about a head coaching search?
No. I think if you look, and I just did this, if you look at the top offenses over a period of 3 to 4 years, and you look at the teams that are always in the playoffs over a period of 3 or 4 years, there's obviously a correlation between those. And the answer is either have Josh Allen or find your own McVay or Shanahan. So when you have this opportunity, you might as well try to find your own McVay or Shanahan. Maybe that guy doesn't exist, and maybe that guy's not ready, but you might as well give it a shot. Just easily make the case for the Browns hiring an offensive coach. And the thought of wanting to keep Schwartz, that makes sense. So many layers to that actually happening, I don't know, but I think you might as well go for that. That's how teams have won. And then the other teams that are always in it till this year are the teams that have Lamar Jackson or the teams that have Andy Reid and Mahomes. So how do you get there? And how far can you ride this defense? All of these questions. But this really is about connecting dots. It's not just about having that name that gets people excited and that guy winning the press conference on January 28th or whenever it is. It's about making the right hires and being on the same page with these decisions. And, like, frankly, you know, one of the points is going to be that you're probably not going to get your quarterback this year. It's probably not out there. And that's not to say that they absolutely won't draft Ty Simpson or another short quarterback later, right? But, like, probably you're going to ride with some version of what you got. And a year from now, you're going to have much more clarity and probably more flexibility in terms of your money and where you really are. Because this is, you know, even though the schedule looks winnable, and even though if you bring back this defense, you could think you should win more than you did. You just fired the coach for not winning enough, but kept the GM for creating this absolute disaster of a roster. You know, where you're going to be a year from now, to me, is a more realistic tell, because I just don't think they're very close right now.
What would be your feelings if they hired Jim Schwartz for the job?
Well, I would feel like that they thought he was the best candidate of this bunch. I would feel like they didn't think much of this bunch. But in doing that, they would be saying, the players love him. He's worked. He's the best hire they've made in years. And, you know, worry later about him giving up what he's best at. And worry later about who the quarterback's going to be. And just figure if you could put together a team that's just going to come out and be a little like this year's team. Just really hard to play against and clearly flawed. And you hope that some improvements and some bounces and another group of good young players could really catapult you going forward. So I think it's realistic as a fallback option. And then when you look at these names, like, can I totally understand why you'd be interviewing Schiehlhaas and Udinski and these guys? I don't really think they're going to hire them. They might if they think the next McVay or Shanahan is in there. But I think you can make a semi-realistic case for, okay, we didn't get this guy. We weren't sure about this guy. Schwartz is in our building. Let's see. I don't think it's plan A or plan B. I think it's realistic.
Well, then if you did, what would bother me if you didn't think much of the crop that's out there, then I'm wondering if you did your homework. Like, I don't go about firing guys unless I have an idea of who I want to replace that guy. And if you didn't think much about the bunch of guys that are out there, then why'd you move on from the previous guy? Sounds like you maybe fired the wrong guy.
Yeah, fair question, and also that partially answers why I don't believe that the Schwartz thing is a mandate. I think in an ideal world, you keep Schwartz and some of the coaches on this staff, obviously not all of them, but when you do fire a guy, like, you're ready for change. You are embracing the fact that you might lose these assistants, that you might have a total start over. You know, what if Jesse Minter doesn't get hired by Baltimore or someone else, and he's the best guy here, but he doesn't play this defense? Like, that's what you're facing, and you're right. There's no easy answer to it. I don't think that he's going to be the guy, but you have to be ready for all those scenarios. That includes, you know, shifting. But I think the overarching thing is they didn't win enough, and they thought it should have been better, and they think it can be better in 26 with this defense. But I think the overarching thing is this is probably a longer-term job, and as I've written and said before, I think one of the selling points is if you do hire a young guy, he's going to get a chance to grow into his role, which is going to be different. And he's going to get a chance to help guide, if not lead, the quarterback search next year.
Zach, we've been debating, you know, the guys like Harbaugh, Tomlin, if he were to be let go, and I get it, you'd think it'd be a pipe dream, that either would end up in Cleveland. But talk about the type of guy. Like, the focus for so many teams seems to be now young, upstart, offensive guy with that kind of capacity. But what about cultural guys? And Brian Flores is another one, you know, that I haven't seen him, you know, get bandied about at all. But is there something to be said for Andrew Berry needing to at least, you know, talk to some guys like that?
I think so, because what's the general rule, right? You kind of go opposite of what you had before. Just from a personality, from a culture, from an out front guy. I think when you look at McDaniel and Dan Pitcher, you see a lot of the same things of Stefanski from background to personality. Now, Dan Pitcher's never been in front of the room, but his background of coming up mostly through one organization in different roles is a lot like Stefanski's. His background of being a 2-year coordinator is a lot like Stefanski's. You know, Mike McDaniel's an Ivy League guy. Now, he obviously was a head coach and a really successful coordinator. He's been in this building, but that's similar. So that is a thought. So, yeah, you're looking for the guy that stands up in front of the room and commands the room and says, that we believe in this and we're going forward and it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy. And temporarily you're hiring the guy who goes to the podium and says, guys, Shedeur has a shoulder and Gabriel has a hamstring, and this week we're going to start Watson, and we signed DTR to the practice squad.
DTR is playing for the UFL now.
Orlando.
Yeah, so his contract will expire in June, so he'll be available.
All right, Zach. Hey, do you find it a little bit awkward or a little bit ironic that Hunter Deckers is going to the Houston Gamblers? That's a conversation for another day. Anyway.
I did not see that. That's funny.
Zac Jackson. Well, you got to really know some college football to know that one. All right.
That's a deep one in the woods. That is not the Iowa State reference that I thought was going to get made.
Zach,
give me time, and I'll make it.
What is like there seems to be it's like a minefield. What would be the biggest disaster scenario then for all this?
Oh, I don't know. That's not one I've thought about. I've thought about it this way. Like, this is hard. We know that here. And sometimes you get caught up in it. You get too optimistic or you get too down and you forget. It's like choose your own misery, right? Philly was on top of the world 11 months ago. I mean, they're a complete wreck right now, at least from the outside. Pittsburgh's miserable this morning. 22 years of winning seasons, and of course you'd trade for that, but of course you'd also get sick of it. Cincinnati's misery. They got a team that should be much better, and you would take the offensive weapons that they have over Cleveland's defensive stars all day. That's an easy choice. So yeah, I don't know what the worst case scenario. I mean, Ken, the worst case scenario is that 26 goes so poorly for whatever reason or reasons that everybody's out in 1 year. Like, I don't read this as Andrew Berry's on the hot seat. I read this as he's got security. Because there's just no explaining keeping the guy who's responsible for this trade.
Zach, and this is the battered fan in me. I might feel better about that because when Jimmy Haslam gave the press conference on Monday, I'm like, he's only mentioning this last year. It makes me feel like he's got like a 12-month. It's year to year now, and I'm like, when you're looking at a general manager, it's so big picture. If you think that the guy has a year, then just forget it and move on.
Well, right. Well, the reality is he has like 9 months, and everybody kind of does. But that's just how I choose to read it. Now, the first thing I thought after that press conference is the one guarantee is the kicker's going to go out and miss like 3 field goals in the first preseason game after he got the endorsement from the owner.
Well, you ain't going to hear a word from me. Not after this year. Nope.
I mean, that was so comical. We signed a 31-year-old defensive tackle. We traded for Tyson Campbell. And did you see that kick Andre Schmidt made yesterday? I mean, those ticket lines had to be lit up.
Come on. Tyson Campbell was a good trade, Zach.
He was.
Damn right.
He was, yeah.
It was a good trade.
All right, Zach, Tommy Togiai's Texans dominated the fourth quarter last night against Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. What do you make of the state of affairs for Pittsburgh? And do you think Tomlin could actually be shown the door?
Well, I know, Ken, you're worried about Ty Simpson. I think Pittsburgh might beat you to him.
Please.
I do think a youth movement there is necessary in some regard. And like I kind of mentioned before, of course you would sign up for the consistency that they've had and the model that they've had. And of course you'd also get tired of it. And of course, having a great defense only takes you so far. That's the reality of it. So I have no idea what Rodgers is going to do. My gut is they don't fire Tomlin because they haven't before. But, they're at an interesting point. Seattle was obviously willing to get rid of DK Metcalf for a reason or reasons. I think Pittsburgh's done a decent job with the offensive line and a decent tight end core, but they got major questions at the major positions. And, this is just a strange spot for the AFC North. Baltimore was the Super Bowl favorite at one point this year, and I believed it. Cincinnati, if they get in the playoffs, they're dangerous as can be. Well, they were a disaster, and they're keeping everybody. And they need change, I think. So, yeah, it's an interesting spot, and there is almost like a case to be made for next year. Go for it. Be in it. Be competent. And if you want to do that. But I think realistically the Browns, here in January 13th or whatever the date is, nobody knows the how of anything, but everybody knows that the Browns are facing a multifaceted offensive rebuild, and just the early roadmap to getting competent quarterback play seems cloudy.
Zach, we're down to one college football game left in the season. First thing, Mendoza, Moore, do you think either, neither, one of them will be decent, good franchise quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, Mendoza's going to be the number one pick, and they're going to build around him, and I think he has a chance. Is he going to be great? I think it's too early to say, but he's run away with it. Now, Dante Moore is a multi-year project, always was. Just really a one full year starter. I know he started some games before he got to Oregon. Obviously doesn't go in with a lot of momentum. We'll see. That's an interesting one. The Jets at 2 probably have to take him. But if they don't, it means there's some serious warts and it gets interesting. So he's young. I think he probably always was coming back to school until this situation developed where it was just like, how could you turn down being a top 3 pick? So that is certainly a story to follow here over the next few weeks. But yeah, I'm a Mendoza believer for sure, and I think he's the slam dunk number 1 pick. I think he probably has been for a while, but I think the way he's played, isn't it more touchdowns than incompletions in both playoff games? I mean, that's absurd.
All right, Zach, thank you very much for the time. All the very best to you and yours, I suppose.
Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you. Zac Jackson. Oh, God, that sounded like a threat in a movie. I'll be seeing you, Ken. Like I owe him money. Rents always do with Zach. Big thanks to Zach from The Athletic. From the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline.